It came down to one order, one commander who chose differently. This is what happens next. Imagine a billion-dollar machine of war. It is a United States Navy destroyer. It has the most advanced radar on the planet. It has enough missiles to level a small city. It is meant to fight other giant ships or shot down incoming jets from miles away. It is the king of the ocean. But today, it is not in the middle of the ocean. It is in a narrow strip of water called the Strait of Hormuz. In some places, this waterway is only 21 miles wide. That is about the distance a person could drive in 20 minutes. On one side is the coast of Iran. On the other side are the rugged mountains of Oman. Everything the world needs to survive passes through here. 1/5 of all the oil on Earth moves through this tiny gap every single day. If the oil stops, the global economy stops. The air on the bridge of the destroyer is cold. Computers are humming. Sailors are watching screens that show everything for hundreds of miles. Then, a small blip appears, then another, then 5 more, then 10. Within minutes, there are 20 of them. These are not warships. They are not made of steel. They are small speedboats made of fiberglass. They are fast and they are loud. They are painted in colors that make them hard to see against the waves. Each one is only 30 feet long, but each one is carrying a heavy machine gun and a rack of unguided rockets. Some of them might even be carrying high explosives turned into human-guided missiles. In the past, these boats would just buzz around. They would play a game of chicken. They would get close enough for the sailors to see the faces of the Iranian crews. Then they would turn away at the last second. It was a way to show power without firing a shot. But today, they do not turn away. They begin to circle. They are moving at 50 miles per hour. They are coming from every direction at once. One boat is in front. 2 are on the sides. 5 more are coming up from the back. The destroyer is a giant, but it is a slow giant. It cannot turn as fast as these boats. It cannot speed up fast enough to leave them behind. The commander of the destroyer is looking at the screens. His heart is beating fast. He has a set of rules he has to follow. These are called the rules of engagement. He cannot just start shooting because he feels threatened. He has to wait for a hostile act or hostile intent. But what does that look like when 20 boats are screaming toward his hull? If he fires too early, he starts a global war. If he fires too late, his ship is gone. A destroyer is tough, but its skin is thin. It is designed to stay afloat after a missile hit, but it is not an armored tank. A single rocket from a speedboat can punch through the side. A single boat filled with explosives can rip a hole in the engine room. 20 boats hitting at once is a nightmare no computer model can fully solve. The sailors on the deck are holding their weapons. They are manning the heavy machine guns on the railings. They are looking through their sights at the spray of water coming off the Iranian bows. The speedboats are now less than 500 yards away. That is the length of 5 football fields. At 50 miles per hour, that distance disappears in seconds. The Iranian commanders are watching from the shore. They have spent decades practicing this. They call it swarm tactics. They know they cannot win a fair fight against the United States Navy. So, they choose not to fight a fair fight. They want to use the death of 1,000 cuts. They want to overwhelm the destroyer's brain. The Aegis combat system on the ship is incredible. It can track hundreds of targets. But it was built to find high-flying missiles and fast jets. It struggles with small boats that disappear behind the crest of a wave. The big guns on the ship are powerful, but they take time to aim. The ship has a defense system called the Phalanx. It is a giant Gatling gun that fires thousands of rounds a minute. People call it R2-D2 with a gun. It is meant to be the last line of defense. But even a phalanx can only point at one thing at a time. If 20 boats attack from 20 different angles, some of them are going to get through. The radio is screaming with warnings. The Americans are telling the boats to stay away. The Iranians are not answering. The gap is closing. 400 yards, 300 yards. The commander picks up the handset. He has to make a choice. He looks at his watch. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. By 2:05, the world will be a different place. Usually, there is a routine to these things. The speedboats come close. They wave their flags. They show their weapons. They yell things over the radio. The Americans tell them to leave. The Iranians eventually turn back. It is a dangerous dance, but both sides know the steps. But in this moment, the music stops. The speedboats are no longer just buzzing around the ship. They are now within 300 yards. At this distance, they are inside the dead zone for some of the bigger guns. A destroyer is like a sniper with a very long rifle. It is great at hitting targets miles away. It is not very good at hitting a fly that is sitting on its nose. The American commander has a heavy book on his desk. It is the set of rules that tells him when he can kill. In the Navy, they call these the rules of engagement, but we can just call them the rules of the fight. These rules say he has to be sure the other side is about to attack. He cannot just guess. He has to be certain. The problem is that a speedboat can go from annoying to deadly in 1 second. One pull of a trigger, one turn of a steering wheel. That is all it takes. The radio is filled with static and shouting. The American sailors are calling out the distance. 250 yards. 200 yards. The boats are so close now that the destroyer has to slow down. If it keeps moving fast, it might actually run over one of them, and that might be exactly what the Iranians want. On one of the speedboats, a young man is holding a rocket launcher. He is not a regular sailor in a big navy. He belongs to a special group called the Revolutionary Guard. They do not follow the normal rules of war. They believe in the power of the small against the large. They believe that one brave man in a cheap boat can sink $1 billion ship. He sees the giant gray wall of the destroyer towering over him. He sees the heavy machine guns on the deck pointing right at his chest. He is nervous. His hands are sweaty. He has been told that the Americans are cowards who will not fire first. He has been told that if he shows enough strength, the giant will blink. He makes a choice. He does not wait for an order from his base. He decides to prove he is not afraid. He stands up. He levels his rocket launcher at the middle of the destroyer. He is looking for the spot where the fuel is kept, or the spot where the ammunition is stored. On the bridge of the destroyer, a sailor sees this through a pair of high-powered binoculars. He shouts, "Tit out." Target is aiming. Target has a shoulder-fired rocket. This is the moment everything changes. This is no longer a game of chicken. This is hostile intent. The commander has less than 3 seconds to decide. If he waits, that rocket will hit the side of his ship. It might kill 5 of his sailors. It might start a fire that he cannot put out. If he fires, he is killing the men on that boat. And he knows that the 19 other boats will fire back immediately. He looks at the man on the screen. He sees the rocket launcher. He feels the weight of the 500 lives on his ship. He says 2 words: clear to engage. The sailor at the machine gun does not hesitate. He has been trained for this for years. He pulls the trigger. The sound is deafening. It is a heavy, rhythmic thumping that shakes the entire deck. The large bullets tear through the air. The first speedboat simply disappears. It is made of fiberglass and wood. It cannot stand up to bullets designed to punch through steel. The boat is ripped apart in a spray of water and fuel. There is a small explosion. Then there is only smoke. For a heartbeat, there is total silence on the radio. Both sides are in shock. The line has been crossed. The dance is past. Over. The war has started. But the other 19 boats do not run away. They were waiting for this. They were told that if the Americans fired, they should give everything they have. They do not care about a fair fight. They do not care about surviving. They only care about the swarm. From 19 different directions, 19 engines roar to life. They push their throttles all the way forward. They begin to zigzag across the water. This makes them almost impossible to hit with a single gun. And then, the sky fills with trails of smoke. The speedboats are firing their rockets. They are not aiming at anything specific. They are just aiming at the giant gray shape in the middle of the circle. They are firing as fast as they can reload. It is a wall of fire coming from every side at once. The destroyer's brain, the Aegis computer, begins to scream. It is trying to track 19 fast-moving boats. It is trying to track dozens of incoming rockets. It is trying to tell the guns where to point. But there is too much data. There are too many targets. The system is reaching its breaking point. The commander hears the first impact. It is not a loud bang. It is a sharp, metallic clang that vibrates through the floor, then another, then a third. The ship is being hit. The giant is bleeding, and the swarm is just getting started. The first impact is like a sledgehammer hitting a metal box. Then comes the sound of the ship's own guns. They are firing so fast that the air smells like burnt sulfur and hot metal. The destroyer is trying to do something it was never designed to do. It is trying to fight a swarm of flies with a heavy hammer. The 20 speedboats are split into groups. Some are circling clockwise, some are circling counterclockwise. They are weaving in and out of each other's wakes. This creates a massive amount of white spray and foam on the surface of the water. To a computer, this is a mess. The radar on the ship is designed to find objects in the clear sky. It looks for high-flying missiles or fast jets. But these boats are only a few feet above the water. The waves are hiding them. The spray is confusing the sensors. Every time a boat disappears behind a wave, the computer has to find it again. And every time it finds one, 3 others have moved. The sailors on the deck are working the manual machine guns. They are not using computers. They are using their eyes and their hands. But the speedboats are moving at 50 miles per hour. It is like trying to shoot a racing car while standing on a moving treadmill. One speedboat gets within 50 yards. It is so close that the sailor on the deck can see the numbers on the side. The boat fires a rocket. It does not hit the thick steel part of the ship. It hits the top of the ship where the antennas and the radar dishes are kept. These are the eyes and ears of the destroyer. They are made of plastic and glass and delicate electronics. They are not armored. The rocket hits the mast and the electronics explode. Suddenly, half of the screens on the bridge go dark. The commander hears a sailor shout that they have lost contact with their satellites. They are now blind in one direction. This is what military experts call a mission kill. The ship is still floating, but it can no longer see the enemy. The swarm sees this. They know they have hit something important. They move in even closer. They are now so close that the big 5-inch gun on the front of the ship cannot help. It cannot point low enough to hit them. The gun is pointing at the horizon while the enemy is right under its nose. On the bridge, the chaos is growing. Alarms are ringing. The ship is tilting as the helmsman tries to turn away from the nearest boats. But there is nowhere to turn. No matter which way the ship moves, it is moving toward more boats. The commander realizes he is losing control of the fight. He has the most powerful ship in the world, but he is being beaten by men in fiberglass boats. He orders the ship to go to full speed. He wants to break out of the circle. The giant engines roar and the ship begins to push through the water. But the speedboats are faster. They match his speed easily. They are like a pack of wolves chasing a wounded buffalo. Another rocket hits the side of the ship. This one hits near the waterline. Water begins to rush into one of the lower rooms. The sailors in that room have to drop what they are doing and fight the flood. Every sailor fighting a fire or stopping a leak is one less sailor fighting the enemy. The speedboats are not just using rockets now. They are using heavy machine guns of their own. The bullets are bouncing off the steel hull with a sound like hailstones on a tin roof. Some of those bullets find the windows of the bridge. The thick glass cracks. The men inside have to duck. The saturation point has been reached. The ship's brain is overwhelmed. The crew is overwhelmed. The impenetrable shield has been cracked. And this is only the first 5 minutes of the battle. Across the water, the Iranian commanders are watching the smoke rise from the American ship. They know they have done the impossible. They have wounded the king. Now, they send the signal for the second wave. Because 20 boats was just the beginning. There are more coming from the hidden coves along the coast, and they are not coming for the destroyer. They are coming for the ships that are following behind it. The ships that carry the fuel. The ships that carry the food. The ships the Navy cannot afford to lose. The commander of the destroyer looks at his map. He sees new blips appearing on the edge of his remaining radar. He realizes this was never just about his ship. This was a trap, and the trap is closing. The destroyer is built to fight a ghost. It is designed to track a missile coming from 300 miles away that moves faster than sound. But it was never meant to fight 20 objects that cost less than a luxury car. This is the saturation point. Think of it like a computer trying to open 1,000 windows at the same time. The screen freezes. The brain of the ship, the Aegis combat system, is the most powerful in history. But even it has a limit on how many things it can focus on at once. Each of those 20 boats is moving independently. They are not a formation, they are a swarm. One boat darts left, 2 more dart right. 4 others are weaving through the smoke of the boat that was just destroyed. The ship's automated guns are trying to keep up. We should talk about the phalanx. Sailors call it the Sea Whiz or R2-D2 with a bad attitude. It is a white dome with a massive Gatling gun sticking out of the front. It has its own radar. It does not wait for a human to tell it to fire. When it sees a threat, it calculates the path and fills the air with thousands of rounds of heavy metal. It sounds like a giant zipper being pulled apart at the speed of light. But the phalanx was built to kill 1 or 2 missiles at a time. It takes about 2 seconds to destroy a target. Then, it has to turn its heavy head to the next one. In a swarm, those 2 seconds are a lifetime. While the phalanx is busy with boat number 1, boat number 2, and boat number 3 are closing the gap. By the time it turns to face boat number 2, boat number 3 is already firing its rockets. And then there is the problem of bullets. A phalanx gun only holds about 1,500 rounds. It fires at a rate of 75 rounds every single second. That means it only has about 20 seconds of total firing time before it is empty. In the middle of a swarm attack, 20 seconds goes by before you can even catch your breath. Reloading that gun is not like changing a clip in a pistol. It takes a team of sailors working on a vibrating, hot deck while being shot at. It takes time they do not have. The ship is now at the saturation point. The defensive systems are doing exactly what they were built to do, but they are being asked to do too much. The air is thick with the smell of cordite and salt spray. The sailors on the smaller machine guns are screaming over their headsets. They are trying to tell each other which boat to hit so they do not all shoot at the same one. But in the chaos, communication breaks down. 3 sailors are shooting at the same boat on the left. Nobody is shooting at the boat on the right. That boat, the one nobody is looking at, is the one that wins. It is a small, blue and white speedboat with 3 men on board. They are not firing rockets. They are not even holding guns. They are huddled low in the cockpit, and the boat is weighted down heavily in the water. It is not carrying weapons. It is carrying 500 pounds of high explosives. It is a suicide boat. The driver is looking at the gray wall of the destroyer. He sees a spot near the middle of the ship, just above the waterline. He knows that if he hits that spot, he can reach the thin skin of the hull. He pushes the throttle until the engine screams. The boat leaps over a wave. On the bridge of the destroyer, the commander feels the ship shudder. He doesn't hear the explosion yet. He feels it in his teeth first. Then comes the sound, a deep, hollow thump that sounds like the earth cracking open. The ship tilts hard to the left. The lights flicker and then turn red. The emergency sirens begin to wail, but they sound different now. They are the sirens for general quarters. This means the ship is no longer just fighting an enemy. The ship is fighting to stay alive. The hull has been breached. The billion-dollar machine is taking on water, and as the ship slows down, the rest of the swarm sees the opening. They move in for the kill. But they aren't just looking at the destroyer anymore. They look past the smoke. They see the huge, slow ships following behind. The tankers, the supply ships. The ships that keep the fleet moving. The swarm realizes that the destroyer was just the shield. And now that the shield is cracked, the real targets are wide open. This is no longer a tactical engagement. This is the beginning of the logistics crisis. While the destroyer is fighting for its life, the real disaster is happening 2 miles behind it. Most people only look at the warships. They look at the guns and the missiles. But a navy is more than just weapons. A navy is a stomach. It has to eat. It needs millions of gallons of fuel. It needs crates of food. It needs thousands of rounds of ammunition. All of that stuff is carried on ships that are not built for fighting. In the Navy, they call these auxiliary ships. We can just call them the life support system. One of these ships is following the destroyer. It is the USNS Alan Shepard. It is massive. It is almost 700 feet long. It is carrying everything the fleet needs to stay at sea for months. But the Alan Shepard is not a destroyer. It is not made of thick, reinforced steel. It does not have a brain like the Aegis system. It has a few small machine guns on the deck, manned by a handful of sailors. That is it. Against 20 speedboats, it is like a giant whale being attacked by a school of piranhas. The speedboats know this. They were never trying to sink the destroyer. They just wanted to keep it busy. They wanted the guard dog to be so focused on its own wounds that it would forget to watch the gate. Now, the gate is wide open. 5 speedboats break away from the circle around the destroyer. They don't care about the smoke or the fire. They turn their bows toward the Alan Shepard. The supply ship is moving as fast as it can, but it is a heavy, slow giant. It is like a semi-truck trying to outrun a fleet of motorcycles on an open highway. The captain of the supply ship is screaming into his radio. He is calling the destroyer for help. But the destroyer is blind in one direction. It is fighting fires. It is trying to stop the water from sinking it. The destroyer cannot come back to help. The speedboats close the distance in minutes. They don't circle this time. They don't zigzag. They don't have to. There is nothing shooting back at them except for 1 or 2 machine guns on the upper deck. The Iranian sailors can see the huge, flat sides of the supply ship. It is the easiest target they have ever seen. One speedboat pulls up alongside the hull. They are so close, they could almost touch the metal. They fire a rocket, then another, then another. These rockets do not hit the electronics, they hit the cargo holds. Inside those holds are thousands of gallons of jet fuel. There are stacks of missiles for the other ships in the area. There are crates of oil. When the first rocket punches through the thin metal skin, the supply ship does not just leak, it breathes fire. A supply ship is basically a floating gas station, and the gas station just had a match thrown inside. The explosion is different from the one that hit the destroyer. It is not a thump. It is a roar that lasts for 10 seconds. A pillar of black smoke rises thousands of feet into the air. The heat is so intense that the paint on the speedboats begins to blister. The Alan Shepard begins to slow down. Its engines have stopped. Its crew is trying to jump into the water to escape the heat. The supply ship is not going to sink quickly, but it doesn't matter. It is dead in the water. And with it, the supplies for an entire carrier strike group are gone. This is what military experts call the logistics kill. You don't have to sink the big, scary warship to win. You just have to take away its lunch. Without that supply ship, the other American ships in the region are on a timer. They only have enough fuel for a few days. They only have enough missiles for one big fight. Once those are gone, they are just floating targets. The speedboats have done more damage in 10 minutes than an entire army could do in a month. They have cut the lifeline. The Americans are now in a race against time. They have to decide whether to stay and fight or retreat to find more fuel. But as they look at the horizon, they realize they might not have a choice, because the smoke from the supply ship has sent a signal. Every radar station along the coast of Iran now knows exactly where the Americans are. They know the shield is broken, they know the lifeline is cut, and now they are launching the big missiles. The speedboats were just the bait. The trap is now fully sprung. The world is about to see what happens when a superpower is forced to fight while it is starving. And the price of oil just jumped by $20 a barrel in a single hour. The fire on the water is not just a tragedy for the sailors. It is a signal to the rest of the world. Within minutes, the video from the Iranian speedboats is on the internet. The world sees a $1 billion American warship leaning to one side. They see a supply ship turned into a pillar of black smoke. The myth of the invincible Navy is cracked in public, for the first time in generations. In Tehran, the leaders have been preparing for this for over 30 years. They do not wait for the Americans to react. They take the next step in their plan. They announce to the world that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. They say it is for safety. They say the area is now a war zone, and no ship is safe. But everyone knows what it really means. They are holding the world's throat and they are starting to squeeze. Think about what that means for a moment. Right now, there are dozens of massive oil tankers sitting in the Persian Gulf. They are filled with millions of barrels of oil. Some are heading toward Europe, some are heading toward China, some are heading toward the United States. All of them are now trapped. They cannot go forward because they will be sunk. They cannot go back because there is nowhere to go. The shipping lanes are blocked by the burning remains of the supply ship. The price of oil does not just go up, it jumps. The price moves faster than the speedboats. In New York and London, the traders are panicking. They do not know if another ship will ever leave the Gulf. They do not know if the war will last a day or a decade. The Hormuz premium becomes the Hormuz panic. People at gas stations thousands of miles away see the prices change on the signs while they are waiting in line. But the real chain reaction is military. The American Carrier Strike Group is currently in the Arabian Sea. They are just outside the entrance to the strait. The admiral on that carrier has a terrible choice to make. He has two of his ships inside the strait. One is sinking, one is burning. He has 500 sailors who are either fighting fires or floating in the water. His gut tells him to go in. He wants to save his people. He wants to show the world that you cannot attack the United States and win. But he is looking at the reports coming from the destroyer. He sees how 20 small boats did more damage than a fleet of cruisers. More of those boats. He knows they have thousands of mines waiting in the water. He knows they have missiles hidden in the mountains along the coast. If he sends the rest of his ships into that narrow waterway, he might lose all of them. He would be sending his fleet into a meat grinder. But if he stays outside, he is leaving his sailors to die. No longer controls the most important waterway on Earth. He is admitting that the ocean belongs to the swarm. Belongs to the swarm. This is the chain reaction. It is a collapse of options. Every decision leads to a worse outcome. And it is not just the Americans who are scared. Saudi Arabia looks at their ports. They realize their entire economy depends on that 20-mile gap. If the Americans cannot keep it open, the Saudis have to find someone else who can. Or they have to make a deal with the people who just closed it. The alliances that have held the Middle East together for 50 years begin to shake. Countries that were friends with Washington start looking for the exit on the horizon, and they see a new reality. The era of the giant ship is ending. The era of the swarm has arrived. And while the politicians are talking, the sailors in the water are just trying to breathe. The ocean is full of oil and fire. The sun is starting to set, and for the first time in 80 years, the United States Navy is not sure if it can win the next hour. The trap was not just for the destroyer. The trap was for the entire world. Oil is the blood of the modern world. Every car you see on the road depends on it. Every plastic bottle in your hand started as a drop of it. Most of the food in your grocery store was brought there by a truck burning it. When the smoke starts rising from the Strait of Hormuz, that blood stops flowing. It does not matter that the battle is happening thousands of miles away from your house. The second that supply ship exploded, the world economy caught a fever. In the first hour, the change is invisible to most people. It starts in the glass towers of New York, London, and Tokyo. Traders are staring at their screens. They see the video of the burning destroyer. They see the black smoke from the Alan Shepard. They know that 21 million barrels of oil pass through that gap every day. That is more than 20% of everything the world uses. The traders start to buy. They are not buying oil to use it. They are buying it because they are afraid there won't be any tomorrow. The price of a single barrel jumps by $5 in 10 minutes. By the time the sun sets over the Persian Gulf, the price has jumped by $20. This is what people in the industry call the Hormuz premium. It is the extra price the world pays for the fear of war. But the price of oil is only the first domino to fall. The second domino is something most people never think about. It is insurance. Every giant tanker on the ocean is insured for hundreds of millions of dollars. The companies that provide this insurance are not in the business of losing money. They are watching the same video the traders are watching. They see 20 small boats take down a billion-dollar warship. They realize that a tanker, which is just a giant floating balloon of oil, has no chance. The insurance companies send out a message to every ship in the region. They declare the Strait of Hormuz a total loss zone. This means if your ship goes in there and gets hit, they will not pay you a single cent. Suddenly, the captains of the tankers stop their engines. They are not waiting for an order from their governments. They are waiting for their bosses to tell them if they are still covered. Within 6 hours, there is a line of ships stretching for 50 miles. They are just sitting there in the hot sun. They are waiting for a green light that might never come. This where the crisis moves from the screens in London to your front door. Most people think of oil as something that goes into a car, but our world is built on a system called just-in-time delivery. It means companies do not keep large piles of parts in their warehouses. They wait for a ship to arrive exactly when they need the parts. A factory in Germany needs a specific chemical from a plant in Saudi Arabia. A tech company in California needs plastic components from a factory that uses Gulf oil. When the tankers stop moving, the factories start to slow down. Then they stop. The people working in those factories are told to stay home. They are not being paid because there is nothing for them to do. Now, look at the gas station down the street from your house. The owner of that station sees the news. He knows that the fuel he has in his underground tanks is all he is going to get for a while. He raises the price. He doesn't do it to be mean. He does it because he knows the next truckload of fuel will cost him twice as much. People start to panic. They wait in lines that wrap around the block. They fight over the last few gallons. This is happening in Paris. It is happening in Beijing. It is happening in small towns in the middle of America. The world is realizing how fragile the system really is. The billion-dollar destroyer was supposed to be the lock on the door. With that lock broken, the door is swinging in the wind. But there is a third domino. It is the political instability that comes with high prices. In countries where people already struggle to buy food, the price of fuel is the difference between eating and starving. When the price of bread goes up because the delivery trucks are too expensive, people go into the streets. They don't care about the naval strategy in the Strait of Hormuz. They just know they can no longer feed their children. Governments start to shake. Protests turn into riots. The war in the water has become a war in the streets of cities half a world away. And the military leaders are watching this too. They see that they are losing the war on the home front without a single soldier being killed. They realize they cannot wait for a long, slow diplomatic solution. They have to open the strait now. They have to prove the swarm can be beaten. But how do you beat an enemy you cannot see? How do you protect 1,000 tankers against 1,000 speedboats? The Americans look at their maps and they see only one answer. They have to change the way they fight. They have to stop thinking about giant ships. They have to start thinking about the cloud. The smoke finally clears over the Strait of Hormuz. The world looks at the images of the broken ships. The damage is done. But the biggest change is not in the water. It is in the minds of the people who design the next generation of weapons. For 100 years, every navy wanted the same thing. They wanted the biggest ship. They wanted the ship with the most guns. They wanted the ship that cost the most money. They thought that size meant safety. They thought that one giant shield could protect an entire ocean. That afternoon in the strait proved they were wrong. It showed that a billion-dollar ship can be beaten by a handful of cheap ones. The record shows that the United States Navy began to rethink everything that day. They stopped looking at the destroyer as the center of the world. They realized that a giant ship is just a giant target. If you put all your power in one place, you only have to lose one time to lose everything. The world begins to move towards something new. Experts call it the cloud fleet. Instead of one big ship, countries begin to build 100 small ones. Most of these new ships do not even have people on them. They are robots. They are fast, they are cheap, and they are everywhere. If you sink one, there are 99 more. The ocean becomes a place of shadows. You can no longer find the enemy by looking for a giant gray shape on the horizon. The enemy is now 1,000. Tiny points of light on a radar screen. The very idea of a battle changes. It is no longer two giants hitting each other. It is a swarm hitting a swarm. The commanders who used to sit on the bridge of a ship now sit in a dark room, thousands of miles away. They are playing a game of numbers. They are looking at the math of survival. The era of the sailor is fading. The era of the operator is beginning. This change also changes how countries defend their shores. Before this, a small country had no hope against a major navy. They could never afford a billion-dollar ship. But after the Battle of the Speedboats, every small nation sees a path to power. They don't need a massive budget. They just need 1,000 small engines and a lot of fiberglass. The balance of power on the ocean shifts away from the rich and toward the clever. Coastal waters that were once safe for trade become dangerous zones. The sea becomes a place where the big cannot bully the small quite so easily. But this change has a dark side. When ships were giant and expensive, wars were rare. Governments did not want to risk their most valuable possession unless they had to. But when ships are cheap and robotic, the cost of starting a fight goes down. If a country loses 10 robot boats, they just build 10 more. Nobody has to write a letter to a mother. Nobody has to hold a funeral. The barrier to war begins to crumble. The world becomes a more dangerous place because it is a more disposable place. Navies start building ships like they build toys. They use modular designs that can be swapped out in a day. If you need a ship for missiles, you snap on a missile rack. If you need a ship for sensors, you snap on a radar dish. The long years of building a ship in a shipyard are over. Now, ships are being printed in factories and launched by the dozen. The sailors who remain on the few large ships that are left feel like ghosts. They know they are living in the past. They know that the next time a swarm appears, their thick steel walls will feel like paper. The Navy of the future does not look like a fleet. It looks like a storm. It moves without a leader. It thinks with a shared brain, and it never gets tired. The king is dead. The swarm is the new master of the waves. Every coastline on Earth is now a potential front line in a war that never sleeps. But as the ships change, the very reason for fighting begins to shift as well. The world is moving away from the oil that started this fight. And that leads us to the long shadow of this conflict. The battle in the Strait of Hormuz was just one afternoon, but its shadow stretches over the next 1,000 years. History usually moves slowly. It takes decades for an empire to fall or for a new technology to change the world. But that day, history moved at 50 miles per hour. The first thing that changed was the way we think about the map. For centuries, the world had what we call choke points. These were small strips of water that acted like the gates to a castle. If you controlled the gate, you controlled the world. The Strait of Hormuz was the most important gate of all. But after the swarm attack, the world realized that a gate you cannot defend is not a gate at all. It is a trap. The great powers of the world looked at their maps and they felt a new kind of fear. They realized that their entire way of life was hanging by a single thread, and that thread was made of oil. The long shadow of this battle is the day the world finally decided to cut that thread. Countries did not move away from oil just because they wanted to save the environment. They did it because they realized that oil was a weapon that could be turned against them. Every factory that burned oil was a target. Every car that used gasoline was a vulnerability. The shift to new kinds of energy, solar, wind, and nuclear became a race for survival. It was no longer about being green, it was about being safe. The record shows that the investment in these technologies doubled in the 10 years after the battle. The world wanted to make sure that no group of men in small boats could ever hold the global economy hostage again. Within 100 years, the Strait of Hormuz became a ghost town. The giant tankers were gone. The oil rigs were silent. The water was clear for the first time in a century. But the silence was deceptive, because while the physical war for oil was over, a new kind of war had taken its place. The Battle of the Speedboats taught the world that the small and many will always beat the large and few. This idea spread from the ocean to every part of human life. It changed how we build cities. Instead of one giant power plant, we built 1,000 small ones. It changed how we share information. Instead of a few giant servers, we moved everything to a massive, invisible network. Power became decentralized. It became harder to kill, but it also became harder to control. The shadow of the swarm also changed the way we view each other. For a long time, the world was divided into the strong and the weak. Strength was measured by the weight of your steel, and the size of your bank account. But after that day, the world realized that a small, determined group could bring a giant to its knees. This gave hope to many who felt forgotten, but it also gave a new kind of power to those who wanted to cause chaos. The line between a soldier and a civilian began to blur. Conflict became something that happened everywhere, all the time. It was no longer restricted to a battlefield. It moved into our computers, our power grids, and our homes. We entered the era of the forever friction, a world where 1,000 small conflicts are always happening, just under the surface. Looking back from 1,000 years in the future, historians see the Battle of the Speedboats as the end of the Age of Giants. It was the moment humanity stopped building monuments and started building networks. It was the end of the idea that one person, or one ship, or one country could rule the world. The ocean today is quiet. The billion-dollar destroyers are long since recycled into scrap metal. The speedboats are gone too. But the lesson remains. The world we live in today is a world of the swarm. We are all connected. We are all vulnerable. And we are all part of a system that is too large for any one person to grasp. The shadow of that afternoon in the Strait of Hormuz is the world we see when we open our eyes. It is a world where the small things matter most, and it all started because a giant ship met 20 small boats, and the giant blinked. The day the swarm met, the shield was not just a battle, it was a classroom for the entire world. We have looked at the fire and the smoke. We have looked at the broken ships and the empty factories. Now, we have to look at what we learned. There are 4 big lessons from that afternoon in the Strait of Hormuz. The first lesson is about the math of war. For a long time, we believed that quality was the only thing that mattered. We believed that $1 billion ship would always beat 100 cheap ones. We thought that because our technology was smarter, it was better. But numbers have a quality all their own. This is the lesson of the swarm. If you have 20 targets and I only have 10 bullets, I lose. It does not matter how fast my bullets are. It does not matter how much my bullets cost. The math is simple and it is cruel. Every system has a limit. Every brain has a breaking point. When you push a system past its limit, it does not just slow down. It fails. The world learned that day that being the best is not enough if you are also the few. The second lesson is about the stomach of the giant. We love to watch the fighter jets and the missile launchers. We call these the teeth of the military. But a giant without a stomach is just a target. The United States Navy is the most powerful force in history. But it is also the hungriest. It needs millions of gallons of fuel every week. It needs food for thousands of people. It needs a constant stream of parts and ammunition. All of that stuff travels on ships that are slow and soft. The Iranians did not have to sink the destroyer to win. They just had to sink the supply ship. This is the logistics kill. When the supply ship died, the clock started ticking for every other ship in the region. Without fuel, the most advanced warship in the world is just a very expensive floating hotel. The lesson is clear. If you want to kill a giant, don't aim for the head, aim for the stomach. The third lesson is about the walls of the ocean. We think of the sea as a wide, open place where you can go anywhere. But the ocean has walls. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow hallway. It is a place where the big guy cannot hide and he cannot run. Geography is the great equalizer. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a destroyer is almost impossible to find. In the Strait of Hormuz, you can see it from the beach. The Iranians used the earth itself as a weapon. They used the narrow water to force the Americans into a fight they did not want. They used the mountains to hide their missiles. They used the shallow water to hide their mines. The lesson is that no matter how much technology you have, the ground beneath your feet still matters. A king in a narrow alley is no different from a beggar. The fourth lesson is about the global nerve. We live in a world where everything is connected to everything else. We are not a collection of separate countries anymore. We are one single nervous system. When a ship burns in the Persian Gulf, the pain is felt in a grocery store in Iowa. It is felt in a car dealership in Germany. It is felt in a hospital in Japan. The cost of war is no longer just measured in soldiers and ships. The cost is measured in the stability of our entire way of life. The Hormuz premium proved that the economy is a weapon. You do not need to invade a country to destroy it. You just need to make it too expensive for that country to function. The world learned that our greatest strength, our connection to each other, is also our greatest weakness. These 4 lessons changed the way every nation on Earth thinks about power. They stopped building monuments to the past and started preparing for the future of the swarm. They realized that the old rules were gone. The big are no longer safe from the small. The rich are no longer safe from the clever. The ocean is no longer a shield. It is a bridge that can be crossed by anyone with enough courage and a fast engine. This scenario is a warning. It shows us that the things we think are permanent are actually very fragile. It shows us that a single afternoon can undo a century of planning. The giant may still be the king of the ocean, but after that day in the strait, everyone knows that even a king can bleed. And everyone knows exactly where to aim. This is a hypothetical scenario based on the historical record and current military technology. Real outcomes would depend on factors no model can predict.